I am really thrilled to have this next conversation with you, Jami. I was actually trying to figure out when we met each other, and I think it might have been really over Instagram direct messages, like through DMs, I think. Is that
Probably.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because and what's interesting is that, and you're gonna properly get a chance to introduce yourself and all that. But what was interesting was when you and I first started chatting and you said to me, I have a story and my story goes back many, many, many years. Forgive me for saying this because frankly, you look like you're 25, but I know that you're older than 25 because I'm not 25 anymore. So we're just going to
Exactly.
leave it at that. Um,
Okay.
Generally, people, let's call it in my generation or older, not that many people are on social media and specifically on Instagram. So I was really struck by the fact that number one, you were on Instagram, and number two, that you were reaching out and talking to me about your story that happened so many years ago. So let's sort of rewind. And Jami, please introduce yourself to everyone. Tell people, let's start from the beginning. Tell people who you are, where you grew up, the community you live in, a little bit about your family, and then give us a brief introduction into your story, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. My name is Jami Nelson, and I live in Boynton Beach the past 5 years. Lived most of my married life in Cedarhurst, Long Island. And before that, the first few years in Queens and Flushing, New York. Um, I married for 42 years to my
Wow.
husband, Jonathan. And
Amazing.
I have four children. The oldest, Ben, is 40. Then there's Elisheva, who's 35. Oh, if I get this wrong, they'll be really upset.
Okay,
No,
all,
sorry.
all of Jamie's kids, you're not allowed to get
Sorry,
mad at
Elisheva is
them.
37, Schiff is 35, and Gavi is 31. Okay. And I have grandchildren. Elisheva has three children, Rosie 15, Noah 11, Max 8, and Shifra has Sam, who's 5, and Solomon, who's 2, and Ben has a 4-month-old. I hope I got all that
Beautiful.
right.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What an incredible family. And tell me a little bit about just um tell me about your like what kind of work you do, what kind of work your husband did or does. Tell me,
Sure,
just
no,
give me a little bit
my
about that.
husband's
And
he's still
also,
working, yeah.
hold on one second. And also situate yourself for me within the Jewish community. Which community do you affiliate with? Just to give people
Sure.
a context of who you are.
Sure, it's hard to introduce yourself, but yes, of course. I identify as an Orthodox Jew, in a very vibrant community in Boynton Beach and all the communities that I lived in prior. Um, I was a preschool teacher for many years. I worked as an administrative assistant in my children's yeshiva. 20 plus years ago, I became a labor and postpartum doula, a childbirth educator, and a lactation consultant. So I was doing that as well as my full time job. And then when I stopped working teaching, I did my doula work full time, which I haven't gone back to since COVID. That's when I moved to Florida.
Okay.
So it was hard to get back into it, but I loved it passionately. My husband works for a small internet company. He works from home. And right now, I consider myself, I don't want to say retired because you never know what life brings and what opportunities come along. So, I'm just kind of hanging out for now to see
Amazing.
what comes, to see what comes.
Amazing, amazing. So, Jamie, as tell me why you reached out to me initially.
It's interesting because I'm not a social media person. I have Instagram just because I love to follow my kids and my daughter Elisheva, who's on Instagram as the I don't know what is her thing called. I'm not
Oh,
even sure.
oh gosh. All right. While you're talking, I'll look her up. Keep going. She's in the food cooking
No,
world.
because she used to have a whole blog,
Yes.
that's what she made. Oh, boy,
Yes.
I'm really blanking out. So I really don't do social media, but I don't remember exactly how I came to you, but you were there, and, I just felt the need to reach out. I was just so, like, impressed and proud and in awe of the work that you do. So, besides my kids and some food people, you're my number 1 person, that I do follow, and, I think I reached out to you just about I don't know why, I just felt the need to tell my story. Maybe it was my baby's, yahrzeit, the day of his passing, or maybe it was his birthday. It might have been something that, like, triggered something in me that I at first, I was hesitant, like, why would anyone care? This story is, 38 years old, but I don't know, I just felt like I just needed to reach out, like you would care, like, you would be interested, because it's not something that I talk about or discuss. Not that I'm quiet about it, but I say a sentence here and there, my kids know, but it's nothing I've honestly never spoken about before, so thank you for letting me do that.
I, I I'm honored. I'm honored, really. And I'd love to give you an opportunity to share about your son. He I know I mean, it was interesting when I asked you how many children you have. And obviously I know your story. It's always interesting to me whether people share about their child that isn't here anymore or whether they don't. And I know sometimes it probably even depends on the context.
Yeah,
So,
usually like, if I'm at a doctor's office, how many I always, 5, 5, it's so interesting that I just gave you the versions of, my living children, and I left out Dov Ber, my son, and here I am talking to you about him, and I didn't include him, so that's
well,
strange.
maybe because you knew that we were gonna have this whole
Right,
conversation about him specifically, and you wanted to give space for your other kids.
right. That sounds just about right.
Yeah, yeah. So, tell me about Dov Ber. Tell me about your pregnancy with him. Tell me a little bit about him.
Sure. My oldest, Ben, was a good pregnancy, but a very difficult delivery, and ended up with a C-section that I probably didn't need, but I used old-fashioned doctors, and they had me on my back, pushing for hours, and had a 9-pound baby. But his APGAR score was 10.
Oh
So,
my
I
god.
don't know how much distress he could have been in, but anyway, it was a C-section with a vertical incision. It was very, very difficult postpartum-wise, being
Yeah.
5 years old. So, I was on a quest after he was born. When I was pregnant again, I even started before I was pregnant that this next baby was gonna be a VBAC, a vaginal birth. I must have gone to 40 or 50 doctors throughout the metropolitan area back in 1987, and everyone was like, "Nope, nope, you're not, we're not." And then after more searching, I found a wonderful doctor midwife practice in Brooklyn. I used to travel from, Queens all the way to Brooklyn for every appointment. They were wonderful. I had a wonderful pregnancy, just really great pregnancy. I was in school at the time finishing my degree in Jewish history. I felt great. My son was a toddler. He was 2 years old. And I had a dip, not dip, I had a stressful delivery in the sense that I really wanted to have that vaginal birth. I didn't wanna go through a major abdominal surgery. I just really was, some women opt for it and it's fine, but just
Yeah.
for me personally, it was just really, really important. So I did, have another 8 pound, 10-ounce baby, and I was overjoyed that everything went well. The midwife was wonderful. Um, and he was a beautiful, like, he was like blonde and blue-eyed and very, very beautiful baby, very different than my oldest looked, who was like 9 pounds, but like long and lanky. This was like a chub. This was like a delicious ball. And
I love the chubby babies. I totally
yeah,
know.
and he was my only chubby one. All the others were like long string beans, 9
Yep.
pounds, but string beans.
Yep.
But he was like just delicious. And yeah, he was beautiful, and he gained weight like beautifully. I mean, I think I just was reading his baby book because it was just recently his yurt site, and he was over 14 pounds
Wow.
at 10 and a half weeks, when he passed away. And he was, doing milestones way early, turning over and, just very expressive. And my oldest Ben, loved him. And I was like just in a happy land of, I have my two boys, and I was so happy. It was the summer and it was beautiful out. And I was just in a
Jamie.
very
Yeah. Say, I'm sorry I
no, I
interrupted you.
was just, like, in this wonderland feeling. I don't know, I don't think I've ever felt that way again, just because life changes, and when something like this happens to you, a SIDS, a crib death, any loss, it changes who you are. So,
100%.
I could say I was really a happy-go-lucky mom, I don't remember being overwhelmed or anything from 1 to 2. We were living in a small apartment. Um, Dov Ber slept in our room, and Ben had his own room. We gave him the master bedroom because he was the king. But, so yeah, so he it was life was good. Life was good.
Amazing. Who was he named for?
He was named for my husband's grandfather who lived till 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Incredible.
so
Incredible. And so what do you remember about that day when he died?
I remember so many things vividly and yet so many things not. The night before, I remember putting him in the living room because we had a small bedroom, and where his crib was, the air conditioner would be blowing right on top of him. It was a very tight space. So I said, "Okay, I'll put him in the living room." I had baby monitor, and I nurse, so I was nursing every 2 to 3 hours. I'm like, "Okay, no problem." Nursed him, gave him a bath, nursed him, went to sleep, and then for some strange reason, I didn't get up. In other words, in the rest of my life, I get up before my babies get up, always. I hear them breathe, I get up. I just get up sometimes before I need to nurse. That morning, I don't know, maybe it was 5, 6 in the morning. I got up and I just felt something in my chest, and it was a small apartment. I mean, I went into the living room, and I was so afraid to go to the crib. I was so, so afraid. And as I walked to the crib, I saw he didn't look right. And in those days, we did put our babies on their stomach. We did. That's what we were told to do. But he was turning over already. So it didn't concern me when and he
Yep.
was all to the touch. I mean, I feel bad sharing these memories. I don't want to cause anybody else pain.
No, I think that you know, there is a line between sharing memories and exactly what you said and causing pain. And I think, we're gonna try to ride that line in this conversation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So obviously I screamed for my husband who was in Hatzalah, which is a Jewish volunteer ambulance service. He came running in and immediately started CPR. And we called Hatzalah to come. I know I ran down into the street. It was a garden apartment. I ran downstairs. I was still in my pajamas and I just remember screaming. And my neighbor, a very dear neighbor across the street, came out, and I remember her taking me into her house, and I felt terrible at the time then because she had 5 children, and I was screaming. I don't and after that, I just remember sitting and just shaking and being in her house. Um, my husband went to the hospital, obviously, and the next memory I have is being in a funeral chapel, tearing kriya. You know, when you're Orthodox or Jewish, you tear your clothing. It was just surreal. I don't remember why I didn't go to the cemetery. I think a friend who was a doctor advised me not to. That's a whole different story. I feel bad I didn't go now. And I remember being with this good friend all day long, shaking and having to call my parents, which was so hard, and just shaking. I That's all I remember until Jonathan came home. It was a Friday, so he was buried very, it was, he was buried during the day, and the next thing I remember is just, like, sitting at a Shabbos table, for that Friday night, and I don't know my exact feelings because it's almost like I don't remember. Obviously, I was devastated. I spent a whole day crying and screaming and, so it was horrible. It was horrible. And then my 2.5-year-old at the time, he was home when all this went down, but I know, a friend took him for the day, took him out when all this was going on. So, yes, it was the hardest day of my life.
I I I mean, just listening to you share about it, I'm like, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Um, do you remember anything about the the days, the weeks afterwards? You know, what you felt, what kind of support maybe there was, what people were saying? Like, what do you remember from those moments?
Well, I definitely remember sitting Shiva, the 7 days of mourning, um, sitting in my living room, trying to take care of a 2.5-year-old when life was certainly not normal, but had the support of friends that would take him. Um, Sitting Shiva, I know from sitting Shiva for my mother and my father and my sister, there was a comfort in that. I didn't find a comfort in sitting Shiva because people would come, no one knew what to say, or they would say silly things like somebody walked in and said Gamzu Latova. Like,
Oh God.
really?
It
Like,
just explain what it is
oh,
for people who
sorry,
don't
Gamzu Latova is
know.
like, it's for the best. I think I had a
Yeah.
breakdown. I think like a friend doctor needed to give me like a shot and I needed to go to sleep.
Oh
Seriously,
God.
because I just couldn't. So if people weren't saying they tried, if people weren't saying things that were not smart, they were just talking about mundane things. And what do you say about an almost 3-month-old baby? I know for people like a dear friend next door, it was so hard for her. She had just had a baby the same age. So people, they just didn't know what to do. So I kind of wanted Shiva to be over. And I
Oh,
had to get back to being a mother to my 2.5-year-old, and I remember getting phone calls from the Board of Health about an autopsy, if there was any foul play, like all kinds of weird things. Obviously, we didn't do an autopsy. Orthodox Jewish people don't believe in that. But getting phone calls from, I don't know, different social service organizations asking me, I don't know, about abuse, about crazy
oh my
things.
God.
Yeah, and then again, people tried, but I had people that I barely knew call me up and ask me if, he was vaccinated, if he was sick, if he was that. But
Really?
yes, 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 yeah.
Just like people like really were so like impertinent or
Not
so
everybody, but,
right.
it definitely stood out, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It stood out. There were wonderful people, I mean, I forgot to say this very important point, but the day that Dov Ber died, a few hours later, I don't even know how, but a Rebbitzin got my phone number. I don't need to say her name, but a Rebbitzin and she called me. She was upstate in camp for the summer, and she actually, like, brought me down to earth in a good way. It had just happened, and she said, "I got your name. I heard what happened. I too had a baby that passed away from crib death. You will survive. You will make it through." It was a very short conversation, but, like, she definitely like, I thought I was gonna die, and she almost, like, pulled me out of that hole a bit. And then the next day, I don't know if it was day 2, day 3, but, like, 3 women just showed up at my door that I never met before and sat with me with their stories of loss. Um, the 2 of the women had SIDS, 1 had a baby that was sick. These were women that I never met before, so that was my support system. Those 3
Wow.
women were my support system because back then there was no social media, and you didn't talk about it. You really didn't talk about it, so I had these 3 women, and for years I was able to talk to them and go to their homes and have someone to share with. So that was life-saving because it wasn't a social media age, and, it was hard for my parents and my in-laws, so I didn't really wanna dump stuff on them, even though my parents were very, very helpful, I cried to them all the time. But, those 3 women really saved me from, disappearing because I felt like disappearing, but I knew I couldn't. I had a young child, and I was in school at the time, and I was pregnant, the whole pregnancy in school, and they saw me right before I gave birth, and then when I went back to school, I had to tell all these people, "Where's the baby? What'd you have? What'd you have?" I
Oh
said,
my
"Well, I
goodness.
had a boy." But he passed away because they saw me, like, a week before I gave birth because the semester was over, so that was hard. Everything was hard, honestly, but I pushed through. I didn't know what else to do. I just pushed through, you know, and I knew I didn't wanna stay in my apartment anymore. I just wanted to leave that apartment, and that's when we ended up buying a house maybe too quickly, finances, and it wasn't the perfect house, but I had to get out. I had to get out of that house. I couldn't be in that living room, I just couldn't. And it was a very hard time. It was very hard. It was hard, and a year later I had my daughter Elisheva, so there wasn't a lot of time because I gratefully, thankfully, quickly got pregnant. I had to wait for my milk to dry up, which was horrible. I don't have to tell people that have gone through losses what it's like. And, he passed away August 21st, and she was born the following August, on August
Mhm.
7th. And it
Wow.
was a pregnancy filled with a lot of nerves
I can
and
imagine. I
postpartum as
right,
well.
I was gonna say, and I'm sure even the first number of months after she was born as
Yeah,
well.
very, very. I had her on it years ago, they would give you this giant infant monitor. It was the size of, like, a toaster oven, and I had to hook up, we called her the bionic baby because she always had electrodes hanging out of her clothing, and the only time I took that thing off was when I gave her a bath, and her poor skin was so raw, but I had to use it. I needed something, when I went to sleep at night. I used it for my next daughter, Shifra, and then by the time Gavi was born, I said, Hashem, my God, I have to believe in you because I can't lug this thing around anymore. You know, it weighed a lot. It weighed down the stroller. And it kind of reminded me every second what was and what I
Of
had
the
to worry
trauma.
about. Yeah. And it went
So
off all the time. It false alarm constantly. So believe me, I was constantly getting up, but thank God I was very happy to get up.
I was going to ask you how you managed otherwise. Like how was your husband with everything? How was your relationship at that point? Was there was going to therapy something that people did? Medication? Like, I mean, nowadays, I mean, I interviewed a woman a couple of years ago who had a baby. It was her first, who died of SIDS. And she spoke very openly about the fact that she was a mess and how she was on Prozac or Zoloft and constantly in therapy and support groups. And like, I mean, but it's 2000, whatever, 2023 at that point, not
Right. It was
1980,
1980
whatever. Right.
1987. Yeah, I mean, I went to a therapist maybe a few times, didn't click. And my husband, he's very religious and he believes that there's a reason for everything, and he doesn't like to talk about it much. If I talk about it with him, he will, but he's very matter of fact, and I'm sure I know he was broken from it, but he different than me. I don't know, different. I fell apart a lot more. But I didn't those few therapy sessions, I remember saying to myself, "This is not gonna work." And nobody ever recommended medication, except that one time that someone said Gamzulatova and I needed a tranquilizer.
Gosh,
But
gosh.
yeah, but I wasn't no, and I wasn't sleeping, and I don't recall. At that time, honestly, I can say that I did not get the help that I needed. And years later, when Elisheva, who was born after Dov Ber, was bat mitzvah age, it was the year that Dov Ber would have been bar mitzvahed, and everybody was making bar mitzvahs. That was the year I did fall apart, and I did go into therapy with a psychiatrist and with medication for a number of years. That helped me tremendously, and I'm very grateful to him because he was a psychiatrist that believed in talking, so it wasn't just medication management, and it was very helpful, but I'll say I'm 65 years old, and it's been many years, and I am ready to really delve in to take care of my trauma because I believe all these years I've had so much inside, and I'm actually starting in November with a therapist that does EMDR. It's
Wow.
I I just know just from my life is wonderful, but I know physical symptoms and emotional things and things inside that I have to heal more, believe it or not, all these years later that there's still more healing to be done.
No, I mean, but it makes sense. It makes sense. Not that not that there's something wrong and that, here you are so many years later and still carrying it, but I think two things. One is that we all know in today's day and age, there's a lot of research that says that, we just don't get over the loss of our babies. It's not something that you can just kind of put away and put into a box, into a closet, and it goes away and you forget about it. We
Exactly.
all know that we carry it with us for the rest of our lives. And as you also just said, we also know that support is necessary in a way that we didn't know about, we didn't really understand at that time in history. And so the way people process pain and grief and struggle today is very different than the way it was done before.
Definitely. I know for me, um, a few years after Dove passed away, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I mean, I live a full life and I don't let anything stop me, but I have a lot of physical symptoms. I'm even doing like a class online that deals with mind, body, and pain. So I know there's a lot in there that still has to what it is you everyone should be able to feel their feelings and not be afraid to feel them, and you just have to feel them. It's I have to learn that it's not dangerous for me to think about Dov Ber, to think about that time. I could go back to it. It could make me sad. It could make me cry, but it's not going to be dangerous to me. I'm not going to disappear. I'm not going to get some horrible disease, that it is okay. Everyone should know that it is okay to think about. So I think for so many years, I didn't tuck it away, but I kept it inside of me only, that that's not a good thing, and I don't wanna burden I never wanted to burden my children or my husband or anyone, with all this. So that is why now, many years later, I'm gonna start to really take care of these feelings and, heal more, which I think is crucial for me. So,
I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible. I'm curious also, I mean, you mentioned that, around the time when he would be bar mitzvahed was a really
Mhm.
painful, difficult time for you. Do you do you find yourself, I mean, I know you said you kind of like you ugh, you ex ex excuse the phone in the background, everybody. Welcome to real life. Um, I know you said that it's not that you never thought about him, but that you didn't want to bother people with him, so to
Right,
speak, with your emotions about him, with the exception of these women who were really there to support you.
right.
I wonder, were there other times besides like when he would have been bar mitzvahed that you like that were really triggering for you? And I'm even thinking, like, even you mentioned in passing earlier in the conversation, like around his yard site, like that you started, like you have his baby book and you were looking at his baby book. Like when did you or when do you find yourself thinking about him or getting triggered?
The truth is, I every day there is a thought of him every day. Um, but I do remember back after he passed away and everyone was having babies, I could not go to Brisson. I just could not. I could not go to the circumcision. To this day, I find it very hard to go to any circumcision. My grandchildren, I cry like a baby, and this is a wonderful thing, a baby, a healthy baby, So I find going to circumcisions are very hard. I find anything that has to do with a holiday or a life cycle or anything can be triggering for me. I'm sitting around a Sabbath table with my family. He's missing. I'm sitting around a holiday table. He's missing. Whenever I look at one of my children's weddings pictures, he's missing. So he's missing a lot, and he'll always be missing. Um, I my children know about him. They know, I mean, obviously, Ben knows he was, born before, but all my other children, I don't dwell on it, but they know his birthday. They know about him. I am so grateful. I have a whole album of pictures, and he was only 10 and a half weeks old, but back in the day, we took pictures. We didn't have, so I actually got those pictures back
Right.
from developing. Used to have to send them out. They had to come back in the mail while I
Yes.
was sitting
Yes.
Shiva. I got
Yes.
those pictures back while I was sitting Shiva, but I'm so grateful because I have a whole album of pictures of him, and pictures of him and Ben and me and Jonathan. So I'm very grateful that I have those pictures.
And do you think that you like what was the impetus for you to turn to become a doula and then work in this field? Was it because you wanted some connection to this process to help heal some piece of it? Like what was the impetus there?
Actually, my mother called me one day and just said, "I found something wonderful that's going to fulfill you and help you." And she told me about it, and then I looked into what a doula is, what they do. I found a course given in Manhattan that I took and became very involved in the birth and postpartum field, and I loved it passionately so much, and for me, it was very healing. I felt that, like, Dov Ber was sitting in a corner every time I went to a birth, and it was like I always felt honored that somebody would allow me to be present in their birth. It's a very intimate time, and so I was so grateful every time, and I gave every ounce of my strength to the woman, to her partner, um, but after the baby was born and things were calm and settled, I would go into the bathroom and I would cry.
Oh,
From happiness, from happiness, and I saw Dove Bear there. So it was bittersweet, but for me, I just love everything about childbirth, believe it or not, before, during, after. And, when I became a doula and then I became a postpartum doula and then a childbirth educator, it was like my calling. I found I really wanted to be a midwife, but like at that point, going back to school, it was just that was too much. So this was manageable for me, and I really gave it my heart and soul, and I loved it.
and I mean, it makes so much sense, right? Because like each of us has to let me actually say that differently. I think every person who has gone through some kind of trauma in regard to building their family, like people decide to do different things with it. Some people can't and just need to put it away and just they never want to think about it again and they just leave it
Really?
up aside and they move on with their lives and they never want to even visit it for a second. And then there are others who find fulfillment. I mean, I'm talking about myself obviously and you who find fulfillment in kind of paying it forward on some level, so to speak, to try to make it a little bit different, a little bit easier in whatever way.
Right. What's so interesting, it just popped into my mind now. My parents had a very dear friend. They were like Catskill entertainers back in the day, and they had a son years before. This was in the 70s. She had a crib death, a baby that died of crib death, and my parents were very involved in this organization where they would have these fundraisers, and they were involved in Long Island Jewish Hospital for research. It's just so strange to me that my parents were so involved in a crib death group that, and then I went and had, um, Dove Bear who passed away. So yeah, that just came to me. But, I try to
Look, it
help
it it
people.
speaks to I was gonna say it speaks to the how just how incredible they were with you and how supportive they were because they already had gone through this with their friends. So they knew on some level what to do. I
Right,
mean, this is God working in his mysterious ways, right?
right, right.
Yeah. Do you what I know that there have also been other ways that you have tried to get involved with supporting people through other kinds of losses. I I'm curious, what that experience has been like for you because working with people who are giving birth, right? Childbirth and being a doula is mostly usually the happy part
Right,
of
the
having
life
a child,
affirming part, exactly,
right?
exactly. I've helped people over the years. Um, I'm not great, like, on helping by telephone. I guess in that way, I'm old-fashioned. I'm more of a face-to-face type of person, so, I used to especially 15, 20 years after, I'd get phone calls and I'd go and meet someone. I drive to Staten Island or whatever it is to meet with a family who, suffered a loss. Still haven't been able to sink my teeth into just speaking by phone to people, which is there's wonderful organizations out there, but I'm always available to speak to anyone. I just want to comfort them. I don't share my own story unless they ask, because everybody's story is very different. And by me saying, "Oh, I had a SIDS baby," I don't like to go in with an agenda, because if I speak to someone, I'm with someone, it's all about them, and helping them, and try to use what I've learned, what I've gone my experience to help them, but not actually telling them unless they ask me,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, one my daughter Shifra's had unfortunately, she has a beautiful 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, but she has had, 3 miscarriages, and,
Oh,
they were pretty late miscarriages, like 19, 20 weeks, 14 weeks, so I hope I was able to help her. I try to I'm at my grandchildren's birth as a mother/doula. Slash doula. I think mostly a mother, but the doula part helps. So I've been blessed to be able to be at their births, which to me is like a gift like no other. Um, and I hope to continue to help them postpartum, during pregnancy, or whatever they need, just be there for my kids, and to help them. So that's what I want to continue to do.
yeah. And what do you say, when you get these calls and someone like, you hear someone has had a loss, has had a baby die of SIDS, and you go out and you sit with someone, and you're speaking from your experience. What do you say to them? How what do you say to them that offer to give them the support to let them know that they're going to make it through it?
Well, the first thing I usually say is I'm listening, because I don't want to come in all gangbusters and ba 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 ba. You have to give that person space and make them feel safe around you, that, I'm not there to knock things into their head. So just to kind of let them know I'm here. What do you wanna speak about? Kind of ask them what they need, because sometimes they don't know what they need, but by putting that question in their head, they'll just start to open up. So it really just depends on who I'm speaking to and, like, what they wanna speak about. I have to just play it by ear and see what happens. I don't have kind of a script or anything. I just have to understand where they're coming from and, like, in what direction they wanna go. And just most important, I think, is just to say, "I'm here. I'm here for you, and I'm listening." So, I learned that early on just from going through what I went through. Sometimes you just want someone to listen. You don't wanna hear someone talk a lot when you're in so much pain. You just need that quiet peace in the beginning to feel, I mean, it sounds hokey, but to feel the vibrations between the 2 of you and to see, what comes of it.
It's not hokey at all. It's exactly what we know in best practices, so to speak, are when someone is in pain. You can't walk in with a list of how to fix it. You walk in and say, "I'm here with you," and
Right,
just
exactly. Exactly. Because everybody might wanna talk about different things. Some people will wanna talk about their baby. Some people will wanna talk about the future. Some people will wanna talk details. So you never know when someone is going through something, what they'll actually be able to share with you.
and do you what do you what do you do now? I mean, in the way that, like, when there are people. Hold on, I lost it because somebody walked into the room. So hold on, just give me a second. I, like, need to rephrase.
Course.
Um, I wonder also what you're making me think of when you were talking about your daughter Shifra and how she specifically has been through like difficulties in her journey with these losses, and I mean horrific, absolutely horrific also, but in a different way, but in a very different way. Do you do you find yourself like worrying, being overprotective for her as she's going through her pregnancies? Like how do you manage your own emotions and also giving her what she needs when she's going through these
Right.
things?
Right, I try to keep my emotions in check because I don't wanna project. I never wanna project onto them. They know when, like, their kids are sick or something, I get a little overzealous with things, and I do a lot of reading, so I have a lot of opinions. But, during these losses, these miscarriages, I was just there for her physically, I was there for her emotionally. I tried to keep her calm. I her strength and perseverance is amazing to me. So I just wanna, like, build her up and make her feel safe. So I really try very hard not to project anything about me except that I love you and I'm here for you, and I also don't minimalize anything. Like, "Oh, I had a crib death baby, yours are miscarriages, you'll be fine." I would never say that. To me, a loss is a loss to a mother, to a family, no matter what the loss is, different levels, yes, but I never minimalize it, and I'm just present. That's all I could say, I'm just present.
I I mean, it is such a gift. It is such a gift that your children have you as a parent, especially it no, I mean that in many parents want to be able to be there for their children. And of course, always, I parent-child relationships can be complicated even beyond experiences of grief and loss and so on. But I think the just having a mother who unfortunately went through something that is similar, I think, is just in like I'm also just struck by like the coincidence, so to speak. And we always know that there's no such thing as a coincidence where, your parents had been involved with this other family that had been through a loss, and you now are able and they're able to pay it forward to you, and you are able to pay it forward to your children. I mean, there's something just so horrific and also so powerful about that.
Exactly, it's like double both sides, and, when you think of the progression, what was happening in the '70s was very different. That was no one spoke about it in the '60s or '70s. Sometimes I'll meet someone older than me, and they'll say, "Oh my god, I had a baby that passed away in, the 1950s," and it's, like, been a secret for all these years. So we've come a long way from the '60s, '70s, '80s, '90s. I'm very grateful for today's community, for loss, for fertility, for everything, because it didn't exist. It was like, yes, I had the support of those women, but it was a very small we were in like a little vacuum, in a little bubble, It was a very
Right.
small club that you didn't wanna be a member of. But now it seems more like global because we could reach out to people all over the world, all over the country, and we could kinda tell people, "You're not alone." Everyone has different experiences with loss, but you're not alone. To me, that's that one phone call I got that day kinda saved me. I felt like I didn't think I would survive after it happened. Like, that minute, when everything was happening, I felt like, well, I was take me with I said to God, "Take me with you. Let me go with him, or if you bring him back to me, I'll take him in any form." I was thinking about brain damage, I was thinking about
Oh
all kinds of
gosh.
illnesses that he might have gotten from this that he would then survive and I would be, you know, but I just wanted him back in
You
any
were
shape.
bargaining. You were bargaining.
I was bargaining. I wanted him back in any shape or form, but I wasn't brought up Orthodox. I became Orthodox in my 20s when I was like 22 when I met my husband. And I was brought up in a traditional home, but I feel that believing in God has saved me from if I had nothing to believe in to keep me standing, I don't know what I would do, if I believed in nothing. So, having faith, I just believe that God wanted him earlier than later. That's the only thing that gives me comfort. So that's how I feel.
Yeah. Jamie, I'm so honored, really. I'm so honored that you reached out to me way back when, and I'm so honored that you agreed to have this conversation and share about your son, Dov Ber, and how delicious he was and how you still think about him so much and how you're still processing and trying to pay it forward and help other people. It's it's a real I wanted to bring you here and have you share your story because it's it's really important for people to understand that pain and our pain and also like the beauty of our children, it doesn't just go away. Doesn't just go
No,
away.
it's still part of our family. He's still part of our family. He might not be physically here, but he's part of our family.
Is there anything more as we close here? Is there anything more that you want to say to the people out there who the people who are struggling now or the people who are trying to support the people who are struggling, like how they can best like you gave so many suggestions already about just being there for people and not trying to fix and not trying to impose your own pieces, but anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to share with people?
Oh, it's such I don't know. I mean, asking too many questions is not good, because you just want people to be able to let things out naturally, and that everybody just needs a support system and not whoever you speak to, you have to feel safe, but make sure you find those people because, when I wasn't speaking to those 3 women, everything was locked up inside many days, many weeks, so and when it first happened, I think I needed more, more, not more support, but I needed to let things out more, and I was just so afraid to. So I just wanna tell everyone that's going through loss of any kind to not be afraid of your feelings, not to not be afraid to feel, um, that, we'll catch you, we'll be there for you, and we won't let you fall.
Absolutely. You, me, I was supposed to have a baby, and so many other people. There are so many other people in this space who do such really wonderful work, holding people, preventing people from falling.
Right,
Abs-
exactly. I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful I reached out to you, and I think I wrote to you like, "I'm having a horrible day, it's my son's 30th yahrzeit or something." You must have thought like, "Who's this crazy lady?" 30
I
years
never
on the
thought that.
line, so, yeah. But thank you for
I
holding that space for me.
You know what? I just in closing, I have to say that years ago, when I was working with Riva Judas at Nechama Comfort, I remember she told me that she once visited this woman. She was in a nursing home. She was like doing some visits in nursing home to, just to like to visit old people in nursing homes because it was something that she did. And she was talking to this woman who must have been in her 90s, and this woman said to her, what do you do? And so Nechama Comfort is an organization that supports people who've had any kind of pregnancy loss in the Jewish community. And so, Riva told her about her work, and she said, this woman said to her, you know, I had a baby that died when that baby was young. I don't remember the details of the story, but the piece that stuck with me was she said, I had a baby, and every single day of my life until now, I have thought about that baby and I have never forgotten her.
This is a
And
90-year-old woman.
yeah, yeah. And just hearing you today say, I think about Dov Ber every single day. I mean, it's
And that's okay. You know,
right.
I'm saying that's what I'm telling myself now.
It is.
That's okay to think about him, you know? Not to keep pushing it away and pushing it away. For me, I'm not saying for anyone else, that for me, it's not good to push away. I have to honor my feelings. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Amy. Thank you so much.